Today I'm going to show you how to win more games by adapting your playstyle with Z. If you want to climb and win more games with Z, you have to adapt your playstyle and your strategic choices. You see, if you pick the same room page and build the same items and go for the same exact build path every single game with Z, you are doing something very wrong. Every game is different, and depending on the enemy team you need to adapt 3 different things: runes, items and your playstyle. So let's start by explaining runes in detail. I said this many times in the past, but there is 2 main rune pages that you need to use with Z. An Electrocute rune page and a Conqueror rune page. Even if you have those 2 rune pages, you still need to change them a bit almost every single game depending on the enemy team. So you want to take the Electrocute rune page if you are playing against mages in mid lane like Victor, Talia, Orianna, Xerath and so on. But you still have to change it a bit, and let me show you how. You want to take Taste of Blood against champions who have a lot of poke, especially if it's really hard to dodge. An example would be REW or Lux E. Taste of Blood will help you lane easier against those champions who you struggle laning against because they have a lot of poke. Against champions who don't have a lot of undodgeable poke, you can take Sudden Impact. An example would be Corki. He doesn't have that much poke like all the other champions, and you can even all-in him at level 3 and make use of Sudden Impact. If you're playing against champions who have a lot of shielding like Lux, you can take a Gathering Storm instead of Scorch, because every time you try to poke her, she's going to shield herself and Scorch isn't going to do much there. The Conqueror rune page is used against melee champions who are not so easy to burst down like Yasuo, Diana, Yone, Fizz, Sylas and so on. Recently I changed the Conqueror rune page a bit, so now I often got Transcendence with Scorch because Scorch is buffed and can give you a lot of kill pressure in laning phase. Sometimes you want to take the Conqueror rune page even though you are playing against a mage in the mid lane because the rest of the enemy team is really tanky. If you are playing against a mage in mid lane, you want to change Less Stand to Coup de Grace. Also, if you are playing against a team that doesn't have a lot of CC, you can actually take Legend Bloodline, it's really good. Like runes, your build path and items should change from game to game. Let's focus first on the mythic items. All of the 3 mythic items are actually good on Z. Prowler's Claw is good for snowballing your lead and catching champions with a lot of dashes like Ezreal or Kai'Sa. One of the best things about this item is that it has a passive that gives you bonus lethality. Downside of this item is that it has no defensive possibilities. I like to go this item every time I get fed because it's really good for extending your lead and your opponents basically cannot escape you. This item is especially good against Kassadin, a champion who has a lot of dashes but still can never escape you if you have Prowler's Claw. Duskblade is the best mythic item for team fighting with Z because after you kill somebody you gain invisibility and you reset the passive so you can kill another target and so on. That item is really good on Z because in team fights after you kill an enemy you are invisible, which means that the enemy team cannot punish you and you can get away more easily. The downside of this item is that it gives you ability haste, which is not a bad stat, but if you are out of energy, extra ability haste is not going to help you. I got Duskblade when I play against a team that doesn't have that much mobility. This item is especially good against squishy supports without the dashes like Nami, Sona, Seraphine and so on. Eclipse is the best mythic item for playing against fighters and tanks. It also goes best with Conqueror runes. That item is probably the safest item to buy with Z because you are so much harder to kill because of the bonus shield and movement speed that it gives you. Also, the passive of this item is super good because it gives you armor penetration. I go Eclipse every time I play against aggressive champions that constantly want to all-in me and kill me. For example, this game the only mythic item that is good is Eclipse. I'm playing against many tanks and champion who all in you like Amumu, Alistar, Malphite, Yasuo and Aatrox, so that extra shield and armor pen really helps. So which mythic item to build on Zed? Well, the simple answer is that you should use all of the 3 mythic items. Prowler for snowballing your lead and catching enemies with a lot of dashes and escapes. Eclipse versus a tanky team, and Duskblade against a squishy team for destroying teamfights. Now the question is asked, should you build the mythic item as your first item on Zed? And the answer is no. Some games you should buy Yumu's Ghostblade as your first item. If you're playing against a mage or a squishy character in mid lane, the better option is to take Ghostblade as your first item, because this item allows you to engage on them easier and it allows you to move around the map much quicker, which can be a game decider. The build that I think is really fun and good right now that goes well with Conqueror Rune page is this build. I think it gives you a lot of power to shred tanks and even one-shot squishy champions. This build is also a teamfight destroyer. The only thing that I don't like with this build is that you buy Yumu's Ghostblade pretty late, so you can't really move around the map fast, but otherwise it's a really good build. The best build with Electrocute should look like this. You choose the mythic item depending on the enemy team, like I said earlier, of course. Also, if you're playing against champions with a lot of shields like Karma, Lulu, Janna and so on, you should always take Serpent's Fang. Like runes and items, your playstyle should also change every game. Some games you should play more aggressive in lane, some games you should play more passive in lane, some games you should try to roam more, and some games you should just stay in your lane to stomp your opponent. It really depends from game to game. Most League players, when they are in loading screen, they don't think about the game or how the matchup should be played, and that's a big mistake. In loading screen and in that time before minions spawn, you should think about how your matchup is going to play out and what lanes you should focus on roaming. You can win so many more games just by thinking about how the game is going to play out before the game even starts. On that way you can adapt your playstyle every single game. Sun Tzu, in one of the best books ever written, The Art of War, says that victory and defeat are already decided before the battle is fought. Let's look at some examples. So this game I saw that I was playing against Yone in the loading screen, and I immediately thought of how I should play the lane. Since I have Conqueror, I know I can kill him at level 3 if he's not careful, so what I decide to do the first 2 levels is just to farm and poke him as much as I can with my Qs. As soon as I saw that I can all-in him, I went for it and got an easy kill. But you can't play like that versus every enemy. For example, the other day I was playing against Lucian mid, and the way you play this matchup is just to save farm with your Qs and sometimes try to poke him with your WEQ combo, because before level 6 you can't really kill him. Just at level 6 you are stronger than him and you can all-in him. As you can see, every matchup is played differently, and before you get into a league game, try to think about how you should adapt your playstyle. The point of thinking how you should adapt your playstyle in loading screen is that you are prepared and play better the laning phase, teamfights, roaming and so on. And that's everything from me today. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed watching, and I will see you guys next time.